talk is by Monica Retamosa, and she will speak about soundscape and bird community in Costa Rica. So, Monica, if you are there, if you can connect.
Hello, thank you for having me again. I will start my presentation.
Yes. Okay, we can see your screen.
Okay. Well, thanks again. My name is Monica Retamosa, and I'm a professor at the National University from Costa Rica. Today we'll make a presentation entitled Soundscape and Bird Community at the Braulio Carrillo National Park, Costa Rica, related to Highway 32. Actually, this talk is complementary to the one I did on Wednesday. It is the same data, but looked from a different perspective. In Costa Rica, 41 or more % of protected areas, among them national parks, wildlife refuge, and protected areas, are directly or indirectly influenced by the effect of roads. One example is the Braulio Carrillo National Park, which is crossed by National Highway 32. This highway was constructed in 1977 to connect the Central Valley with Caribbean coast. The construction of the road implied the opening of the forest cover in a radius of up to 1 kilometer for the movement of machinery and storage of materials. To avoid further destruction of the forest, the national park was created in 1978. Through National Highway 32 travel 80% of the country imports and exports of the Costa Rica. Well, construction of roads can have many effects on habitat, on biodiversity. For example, the opening of the forest can result in habitat loss and fragmentation, and noise resulting from vehicular traffic, among others. We will focus in the study on the effect of the vegetation structures and sound pressure level on bird communities and soundscape. Many effects on biodiversity have been related to road traffic, from changes in the spatial distribution and population or community parameters of wildlife, for example, to alterations in acoustic communication due to masking effects by vehicular noise. These effects has been reflected in acoustic indices in some studies, and mainly has been studies including acoustic complexity index and NDSI. So the objective of this study was to compare the soundscape and bird communities in two areas of the Braulio Carrillo National Park with different environmental disturbances on road traffic noise and vegetation structures due to Highway 32. The area near the Highway 32 was expected to show higher sound pressure level and a more disturbed vegetation structure than the remote area. In addition, we expect the bird community to be less diverse and the soundscape to have a higher proportion of atrophonies and a lower acoustic diversity of acoustic complexity in the area near the Highway 32 than the remote area. As I said, the study was conducted at two sites within the national park, each one of them selected based on its distance from Highway 32. Quebrada is a ranger station that is dedicated mostly to public use for tourism, and it is located on Highway 32. Ceibo is a sector of the park that is dedicated exclusively to protection and research, and it is located about 20 kilometers away from Quebrada. The access to Ceibo is by a low traffic and paved road, and there is a minimum distance of 1.5 kilometers from this road to the sample points. Both Ceibo and Quebrada sites are included in the live zone very humid tropical forest transitions to pre-montane and present an altitude between 500 and 600 meters above sea levels. We used 12 sampling points at each site. We did recordings, bird point counts, and vegetation assessments. We used vegetation plots and photographs to assess vegetation complexity. We made 4 visits to each study site from June 2017 to August 2018. 2 full days of recordings were done per visit. We did continuous recording from 4 to 6 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. and 10 minutes every hour for the rest of the day. We also did 4 bird point counts per visit at peak hours of Earth activity using auditory and visual detection by 2 observers for a period of 6 minutes in a radius of 25 meters from the observer location. With this data, we obtain 12 traditional acoustic indices, 4 bird indices, and 5 habitat variables, as you can see there in the slide. We need to take into account that all acoustic indices were calculated for 1 minute fragments, and they are average per hour, sampling point, and study sites. For analysis and avoid biases, we use fragments that corresponded to the same time period as the bird point counts. And also, bird indices do not represent actual estimated parameters at the population or community level, as we did not consider detectability. For example, richness is the observed richness, the number of species at each sample point, and abundance represents observed total abundance, that is the total number of individuals of all species detected at each sample point. To analyze this data, we simply compare acoustic indices and bird indices and environmental variables between sites using voltage tests for each index and variable separately. And we also did multivariate analysis of the study sites using multiple factor analysis using the 3 sets of variables, the acoustic indices, the bird indices, and environmental variables. Well, with the results, with the multiple factor analysis, we found that Seibo and Quebrada actually separated completely in the multiple factor analysis, besides each one of the sample point clustered around the ellipse that represents the corresponding study site. The first axis was mainly explained by bird indices, for example, richness and abundance, and the vertical opening of the forest. And the second axis was mostly explained by environmental variables representing abundance of shrubs between 1 and 5 centimeters of DBH, and abundance of trees with more than 5 centimeters of DBH. The variables with the most explanatory value are those representing vegetation structure, complexity, and bird indices. However, axis 1 and axis 2 together explain 47 of the variance, meaning that there are still other factors explaining data variability other than the ones we measure in this study. Well, for the comparison of the indices between sites, well, I will make this more easily to understand through the following slide. Okay. For the vegetation structure, we found in Quebrada there was a lower density of trees and shrubs and greater opening of the forest, both vertical and horizontally. In Seibo, we found higher density of trees and shrubs and higher complexity in the forest, both verticals and horizontally. According to the bird indices, in Quebrada, we found forest birds and birds that use open areas as well. We also found higher abundance, richness, and diversity of birds, although the difference was about 33 species, it's not that much. In Seibo, we found only forest birds and higher bird evenness. For acoustic indices, in Quebrada, we found higher acoustic complexity by acoustic activity and sound pressure level, as expected about the sound pressure level, but lower acoustic evenness. In Seibo, we found higher proportion of anthrophonies and higher acoustic diversity, entropy and the frequency level, and total entropy. Well, as a matter of discussion, the acoustic complexity index adequately represented the bioacoustic activity of birds. We've seen that in every study we made here in Costa Rica. And so it was according to the bird indices. But the other acoustic index not behave as expected according to the condition of the site, but not as expected according to the bird indices. Our observations suggest the Seibo was a more mature and preserved site than Quebrada, due to its higher horizontal and vertical complexity of vegetation structure and higher density of trees and shrubs. Also show less sound pressure level from vehicular traffic. However, Quebrada presents a higher richness, abundance, and diversity of birds than Seibo, contrary to what we expected. Nevertheless, the acoustic community appears to be more diverse and better partitioned in Seibo and less even in Quebrada. Actually, in Quebrada, we have high dominance of certain species. For example, we had a flock of different species too, numerous individuals, and usually they have similar vocalizations, and usually the leading species of the flock is the one that vocalize the most. So it doesn't mean that if we have more individuals, we are going to have a more acoustic or more diverse acoustic activity. We think that vegetation alterations related to the road constructions and the adjacent, and that we have near to the side the canyon of an important river, for example, the Sucio River. You can see to the right, we have different microhabitats in Quebrada, and so that might have created niches for a variety of bird species, including species from open areas. The pictures of the right, as I said, are showing the kind of habitats. On the other hand, birds show great vocalization plasticity, which, added to their ability to move to more suitable nearby habitats, could make it difficult to use them as indicators of disturbance. That's what we are thinking. Other parameters could be incorporated to indicate habitat condition, for example, vocalization behavior, nesting success, fitness, and so on, or even consider some specific species with characteristics of life history that can reflect environmental conditions of interest, or even more, consider other groups entirely, such as insects or amphibians. So in this case, birds were not good indicators of habitat conditions in general, as measured by the habitat variables. However, the acoustic indices did reflect the ecological condition of the sites, which is promising from the point of view of using acoustic indices as indicators of ecological condition, a result that is similar to what we found using another type of method in the other study. And thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Monica. So there are questions. Natalie Sanchez asks, is the bird composition found in the road similar to other fragmented habitat in Costa Rica? Is the road and noise associated to it filtering the community?
Well, apparently the noise is not having a great impact on the bird community, at least. That's why I say that birds did not behave as very good, well, indicators in this study. Although the communities were slightly different. For example, we have 170 species in common and 73 were shared. 75 were only found in Quebrada, and 22 were only found in Seibo. But the thing is, we think Quebrada is a particular site for birds. There's a mixture of habitat conditions, and so we have a mixture of different species, not only forest species, but also birds from different areas, for more fragmented areas, or that come from open areas. And so that's the reason why we have these kind of results. But the acoustic index, however, we're able to find, we're able to mimic the ecological condition of the sites. I don't know if that responded your question,
Thank you.
Natalie.
I think so. Are there other questions? Do not hesitate to raise a hand and to ask directly your questions to the video to make it more live. I would have a question actually. What is the future of this study? Do you plan to extend it to what do you plan next?
Well, actually, actually, I'm working in different habitats now. I'm working on I have another project in protected areas and areas surrounding the protected areas with different landscape characteristics. For example, some of them are more agricultural or more kind of open areas, and others are more touristic areas or urban areas, and we're working on those areas as well, just to have a wider range of acoustic measures of the environment here in tropical ecosystems. And my idea is to keep recording for many years and to have this and just kind of understand what acoustic indices are telling us about our specific habitats here.
Thank you. Perry has a question for you.
Excellent presentation, Retomosa.
Thank
It's
you.
really nice to hear. Have you been down to Serena in the south?
No, I haven't. Actually, I'm actually at this moment I'm working with an institution called FONAFIFO. We are working in southern Costa Rica. They usually work with I mean, they work with I don't know how it's called. It's when you pay to the owners of the fields for the services of the forest. And well, we're working with them just to find out if we can add information to the forests that are conserving, to see if they have additional values of biodiversity. And so we are working in southern Costa Rica, but we still don't have data to show at this moment.
Okay, but we have some really good baseline from La Selva and also around Serena from 1989 and 96. So if you want to compare data, we've got some really good stuff to compare with.
Ah, that would be great. Thank you very much, Dr. Cross.
Okay. You're welcome.
I would have a question which is not exactly related to your talk, but about Costa Rica. Costa Rica is really famous for its eco-tourism politics. Does Costa Rica consider including sounds as a way to advert even more about the interest to go and to travel in your country and to discover the forest?
This is kind of a very new discipline here in Costa Rica. And actually, I started working in 2015, and now there are a few of us that are working in this field. So it's kind of a novelty yet, and so sound is not considered, but we are trying to do that. We're trying to, yeah. We're trying. I working even with the agency that manages the natural resources and biodiversities, and I'm trying to convince them that we may include passive acoustic monitors in monitoring, long-term monitoring of different areas of the country, and so we can have information for the future.
So Bernie said, no, it's a direct message. Any other question, comment to Monica? No? So thank you very much, Monica.
Thank you.
Very, very nice research. Thank you very much.
Thank you.